rush Saturday's Rugby World Cup final was. It was another nail-biter, but the Springboks pulled it off and they're bringing that trophy home. They expect it to touch down around 11 tomorrow morning. Later in the week, they're going to begin a countrywide victory tour. And tonight at 8 o'clock, the President, of course, is going to be addressing the nation about a variety of things, but of course, we expect him to focus on the sporting victory as well. I'll bring in my colleague, sports editor Vata Ngobeni now. Vata, thanks so much for joining us. You did tell me when we spoke on Thursday that you thought it would be a close win for the Springboks. I think you said between 3 and 5 points.
Yeah. Exactly.
It was 1 point again. Were you able to watch this time? Because I was able to watch this time. I just found it so nerve-wracking. I did have to do a lot of walking around at times.
No, same here, Sally. I had to. Good evening, Sally. At the same time, I had to. I don't know how many times I stood up and sat down and walked up and down. We were on a work commitment in Sun City, but I mean, the place was jam-packed. There were Springbok jerseys everywhere. And I think the cheers, you know, and we could see it across the country, you know, from our broadcast.
It was astonishing.
I think at every nook and cranny in this country, people just met and made sure they were supporting the boys. And I'm sure the Boks heard them all the way from Paris.
Yeah, I mean, the celebration around 2019 was amazing, but there was something for me, something different about last night's victory, and maybe it's because times are particularly tough at the moment, but it did remind me a little of the 1995 World Cup victory. And of course, that was sort of filled with all the joy of South Africa no longer being a pariah state, you know, but this felt extraordinarily powerful on Saturday.
Yeah, you know, Sally, you know, one of the things that the Springboks have said in the last week is how 2019, sort of that World Cup victory fell on their laps. You know, their plan had always been the 2023 World Cup, and to win that, and that's how Jacques and Rassie had planned it when they came in 2018. And I think only rugby lovers would have thought that they had a chance in 2019. Especially when they saw their road into the quarters against Japan and obviously played Wales, and, you know, rugby fans were like, okay, the Springboks. I think that victory would see her having been the first black captain of the Springboks, but also being the first black rugby player in history to lift a World Cup. You know, really got, I think, the rest of South Africa buying into what the Springboks are doing. But I think the way they've played in between these two World Cup victories has really got the country behind them. And I think non-rugby fans and just ordinary South Africans who are feeling the weight of pressure either from load shedding or the economic situation have looked to the Springboks, you know, for hope.
Yeah. Because
it is through their winning and going to a World Cup that they've ignited hope back in this country again.
It's an interesting point you raise. I was chatting to Professor Vasti Roach, who's a social scientist from Stellenbosch University a little earlier, and I was putting it to her that it's hope and inspiration, but also an example of how true transformation and multiculturalism is a winning combination. Would you agree?
No, 100%. I think another thing that Sia had said at the end of the 2019 World Cup, post-match, in his post-match interviews, he said, you know, it's amazing what we can achieve as a country if we all work together. You know, and he repeated again on Saturday and said, when he was asked by a journalist at the post-match press conference, what has inspired you? He says, I can't put it into words. You've got to come to South Africa to understand what the people of South Africa do for this team. The people of South Africa have inspired this team because it's people from different races, different genders, different ages. And what we do as South Africans, you know, in times that are desperate for the ordinary man in the street in this country, living again in load shedding and the dire economic situation, you know, that to them inspires that team, and they just want to prove to this country and to every single South African that if you all work together from all walks of life, and you look at the Springbok team, it's people from all walks of life in this country. It's so representative of the ordinary man and woman in the streets of this country. And to achieve what they've done, Sally, back-to-back world titles. You know, this by far, and I don't want to say arguably, I will say certainly this is the greatest Springbok team of all time. And this is coming from a sport that had been used to divide this country. This was a sport where Nelson Mandela had spoken about South Africa being the skunk of the world. It included rugby. And this is a sport that he used as Nelson Mandela to unite South Africa in 95, but more than anything, you know, this has inspired hope in this country of what we can achieve if we work together.
So what has rugby got right that, say, soccer hasn't?
It's intention. Sally, it's intention. It's good leadership and intentional leadership. I think, you know, and this started not even 4 or 5 years ago. You got to go to the times of a guy like Regan Hoskins, who was president, and he sort of settled the ship, because South African, you know, rugby leadership, especially the elected officials, have not been known to be the sharpest tools in the box. But when Regan Hoskins came in and he brought a guy like Jake White in, you know, under his administration, and they went on to win the World Cup in 2007, you know, again, there was belief that rugby can change South Africa. And yes, there was a whole transformation agenda, but rugby embraced it. And they said, we will not walk away from the quota system. We will enforce it. Our provinces have to use it. The franchise have to use it. Again, it's intentional leadership. Then Mark Alexander came in. And yes, we had an issue with some small coaches that I think struggled with it. And Rassie Erasmus, when he came in, you know, and he said, we don't have a choice. We just do not have a choice. We are picking a pool of players from, 8 to 10% of the country. We're leaving the rest of the country out.
And it surely has silenced the detractors, because you and I both know about the narratives of, oh, the quota players, we're not going to have our best team. Well, that has proven those detractors completely wrong.
Without a doubt. You look at the guy like Siya Kolisi, I know a lot of, there were pockets in this country that called him a quota captain and so on. What this young man has gone to achieve, I can say without a shadow of a doubt, surpasses what Francois Pienaar did and what John Smith did. And these are great captains of Springbok rugby. And he's done it by merit. And, you know, one of the New Zealand pundits, a former All Black, Mils Mulayina, spoke about Siya this year and how he was able to come back from an injury that should keep you out for a minimum of 9 months. He was able to do it in 4 months. And as soon as he came back, you saw his influence on the side. They won against Wales in that warm-up game, and they beat the All Blacks, handing them their heaviest defeat in history. And that is all because of the influence of a young man from Zude, who was raised by his grandmother, who came from absolute poverty. You know, and then you speak about the likes of Makazole Mapimpi, who had scored the first try in the World Cup final for the Springboks. And again, the late Kaunta Ndunja, in his commentary, said in that game, it is unbelievable that a Springbok who probably comes from the worst background, hands South Africa their best moment on the biggest stage in world rugby. And these players are black. They've earned their stripes, Sally. And again, great credit to Jacques Nienaber and to Rassie Erasmus and to Mark Alexander and his executive, who have given Rassie this mandate and have allowed him to do this. Because the likes of Lucanio Am, who are now spoken of as one of the greatest centers the game has seen in the modern era, the Chairs and Colbys, the Curtly Orenses, the Oxen Chairs, the Trevor Nyakanis, the Marvin Ories, and their teammates don't see them as black players. Their teammates see them as Springboks. The rest of South Africa now sees them as Springboks. And dare I say this, the world knows that they are not quota players, they are actually Springboks.
Astonishing. I'm going to bring in Professor William Gumede now. He's a political analyst. William, thank you so much for joining us on Zoom. I'm not sure if you've been able to hear what Vata's been saying, but we're talking a lot about the leadership of someone like Siya Kolisi, and it really is quite an extraordinary story. Just, if you will, as we start, will you share your thoughts after Saturday's match? Was it just a wonderful sporting moment, or for you is there more significance?
No, thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here. I'm very grateful. I did listen. I caught some of the comments there. I think for me, really the most important thing about this team has been, they've been led, and the kind of leadership that we've seen with, Rassie Erasmus and also Siya Kolisi. It's a leadership that is inclusive, that is caring, and is also and is based on competence. And it's also a leadership that's vulnerable. I mean, you see, Sia is not afraid of showing his vulnerability. And the same with Rassi. I mean, if you look at, you know, the moment when a whistle blew after the match, Sia ran down the field to give Cheslin Colby a hug. And, you know, Cheslin Colby could not watch the last part of the game because he felt he let down the sides when he got a yellow card. I mean, these are just moments that show the kind of leadership that this team, that brought this team into this victory. But I think people often forgot that to get a globally competitive team and a winning team like the Springboks, there are other systems that needed to be in place and that government could also learn from. I think the first thing is to say, you know, quality leadership. Then what you need, I mean, you have to have top class knowledge and base your decisions on knowledge of the environment, knowledge of the competition. Then, you know, top class analysis also and of the environment and of the competition and of the opportunities that are available and playing to your strengths. I mean, this team have played to their strengths, and that's a big lesson for, you know, the people that run South Africa, that we have to play to our strengths. What do we make in the country? What can we export? Playing to your strength. And, you know, the competent team behind the World Cup, coming from different specialities, from health, from psychology, you know, your physiotherapists, your analysts. So it's important to have competent teams. And then the obvious thing is hard work. I mean, if you're going to be a world-class player, I mean, you can't go and it's not a quick fix. It's not getting a tender. Is you have to work and, you know, day and night, and you have to try to be your best. And teams like this need a strategy, a target for the future, and then a strategy how to get there. And then they have to hold people accountable. If you don't deliver on the field, you'll be fired. If you don't deliver as a coach, you'll be fired. So accountability is so key. To make this, that have made this team a world-class team.
You know, so what you know, it's really an example. The leadership and the teamwork and the hard work. It's kind of a template for success in a way. Speaking to Professor Vasti Root earlier, I asked her how we take this wonderful feeling that we're all experiencing. What do we do next? And you know, she says we have to translate it into action in some way so that feeling is not just a feeling that floats away after a few days. What would you say we can do to build on this, if anything? I mean, is it just a lovely example that should inspire us and that's it? Or could this be a moment of real change?
I mean, before I get to this, I mean, what I let out is just, you know, this has been an inclusive team, and it shows that one can do merit-based appointments and choices with a social justice concept, you know, being aware of social justice issues and that the past needs to be addressed, but you do it within the context of merit-based. You can't build world-class societies or governments or teams without merit-based. I mean, it's an absolutely key part of it. And I think what this team has, and the success of this team, why it brought the country together as it has, is, you know, we are in a moment in South Africa, a moment of hopelessness, and a moment of multiple crises, where people have given up on the state, and some has given up on their own, on the agents, you know, the individual agency, and the country is really leaderless. And here, you know, what this team has brought is almost firstly hope and and also offers an alternative that actually, as South Africans, we may feel hopeless, but we have actually a team that provided, that inspiration that actually we could, not only on the rugby field, but in other fields, we can actually make the dream for South Africans possible. The dream of employment, the dream of the economy that grows, the dream of a safe society. It is possible, but obviously then it can only be possible if there's competent leadership, fresh ideas, and that the diversity of all South Africans are leveraged, and that we pursue merit-based policies, and that we care for everyone, that no one is left behind, whether whatever your color, or whatever, whether in your rural areas, or if you don't have the skills, that you are not being left behind. So it's the success offers, the idea to many South Africans that it is possible that not only in the sports fields, but potentially the country can also be world class.
Absolutely. William Gumede and Vata Ngobeni, thanks very much for now, because you're going to join us again a little bit closer to 8. Such amazing insights from both of you. So we'll be chatting again soon. But still